monitor this from a safe distance.
Yeah, and we're talking about a safe distance. We have another crew on scene, and Alexis is telling us that they moved the media back to the Valero because this is definitely something that is moving very quickly. So, usually when there's some danger, they make sure the media is at a safe distance. So it's good to know that they've got that. But, Luis is there on the 3rd floor, and if he were to get an evacuation notice, then obviously he would go to safety. But it looks like there's some good distance between him and those flames. But again, we haven't really seen what I was interested in watching for. We haven't really seen a big change in direction.
Right.
What I've been seeing, at least for the last 45 minutes or so, is that it's blowing in one main direction. But I mean, look at that line. As soon as we say that one area is contained,
right.
This is the nature. This is what we're talking about here. It's so difficult to watch because you know how hard these crews are working, and one gust at 42 miles per hour, Justin was saying, will crop that right back up.
Indeed. So kind of to reset here for those of you who might just be joining us right now, and there is that John Paul?
That's John Paul.
That's John Paul Barajas there on one of the upper floors, getting set to potentially join us here in just a little bit. These South End apartments, which again geographically, if you're looking at a map, this is south, and we'll bring John Paul in here. So you're south of 410, right along I-37, you would head toward Pleasanton, if you will. But John Paul is ready to join us and bring us up to speed on what you're seeing from where you are, sir.
Well, it is a chaotic scene, and the entire drive down to this area, there's fire trucks coming in, and fire trucks from all over. I saw one from Travis County, saw one that said Waco, so it's really all hands on deck here in the South San Antonio area. And I know y'all been looking at it all afternoon. I was watching the stream as I drove up here, but you can see just how many RVs there really are. There's dozens, and you can see that flame to the right is only getting bigger and bigger as we've been monitoring it the entire time, the entire drive up here. But if we continue going to the right, Luis, over to the other side of the balcony, this stretches so far, and you can see how much devastation and vegetation is already burned through right there, and there's still fire spots. And Luis, if you can come forward, I want to show this other apartment complex here on the right-hand side. So there's two complexes. We're at one, and the one out here on the right side corner is where a lot of the fire command post is at. I was there just for a brief moment. Obviously, a lot of moving parts, a lot of people doing very important jobs, but there was burn marks where we were standing at that command post just from the fire. Obviously, with these types of winds, they try and contain it as much as they can, but one gust can pick up one spark, and you have another fire in a completely different location. So this is a very active and dangerous situation. We had a photographer come. They pushed her back. They said they're keeping some media further away. So this scene is, unfortunately, looks like it's growing, and firefighters are doing the best they can to contain it and keep it as calm as can possibly be given these dangerous situations and circumstances with the high winds and dry vegetation.
Yeah, John Paul, what we've been trying to figure out is if I-37 at any point is shut down. What did you find?
Not from my drive from about the Southtown area. It is not. There was kind of closed down to 1 or 2 lanes at a portion, but that was just because of a construction crew, and they were moving along the way, so it wasn't a full close down. But so far, no closures due to the fire at this point.
All right, so John Paul Barajas reporting again from the Southton Apartments, which are very new, and they are a luxury complex. Technically, again, just to be specific geographically, they're in Elmendorf, but they are listed, I'm just looking online here, they're listed as a luxury living a residential community that is brand new. And we had a screenshot or a text correspondence from a resident who lives there at the apartment complex. Again, they've been evacuated, but she sent a screenshot. She received an alert on her phone, an evacuation alert, presumably from one of the law enforcement agencies there in the area. But and you already alluded to this, these residents have been evacuated for a little while now.
Yeah, and I don't know, John Paul, if you were able to see if he was able to see. Okay. Well, we're going to check back in with him about what he can see on the road. But I think the most important view is the one we're looking at, obviously. This area where the flames are now is a little bit forward. So it's possible that the winds have shifted gears. But again, Yeah, right there. We're finally seeing that come forward, which is something we have not seen before. Before, that line of fire was behind that RV you're looking at is on the very edge of this RV park. And now for the first time, we're seeing that fire move forward. Good news, I guess, if you could say something like that, it is further away from the property that we're seeing. So it's not heading right there towards the other RVs. But I mean, just watching this fire spread has just been incredible. It's really scary to see how quickly it's spreading. And right there is what we were talking about earlier. Just because you're seeing black smoke doesn't mean it's property. There are some really thick areas of vegetation is what I'm assuming, because sometimes you'll see that kind of whitish gray smoke and then all of a sudden this big plume of black smoke will go up in the air. And we're assuming that that whole area is grass and not seeing any property right there. But this is what we've been seeing since 12:30 during the noon show. Justin simply was looking at a TransGuide camera and saw a little bit of flames, so we put our attention towards it, and look at this now. It's a big enough situation. John Paul just said Travis County and Waco fire departments are here. That's a big deal.
So that gives you a sense of just kind of the urgency right now, where we're quite literally, I've said it a few times already, all hands on deck, even if that means from outside of Bexar County and beyond here. And again, it's approaching 3 o'clock here in a few minutes, where kids will be getting out of school and people will be, or parents will be leaving their houses to go pick up their kids, and we'll see this smoke, no doubt, and wonder what's happening. But we are monitoring this, probably the most extreme of all the fires that we're monitoring right now, because there are a number of places that are on fire literally right now.
Yeah, and one of those, I'm glad you brought that up, because we just want to make sure, because it's near the Toyota plant area. The Duke Road and Trumbo Road is one where we had heard from inside sources with law enforcement that structures were on fire. We are getting crews to that area too. And I know we said that a little while ago, but John Paul brought up that really good point that it is difficult to get to these places. And we're hearing about, first responders flooding to certain areas very early because of our scanners that we have. However, it's still difficult for our crews to get places because roads are being shut down, and obviously the emergency vehicles come first when it comes to getting to these areas. So we are still trying to get updates about what types of structures may or may not be on fire at Duke and Trumbo roads, but we do have a crew on the way there as well. But clearly, the main focus right now on I-37 in Southton, I'm seeing way more people around this RV than we saw when it was just one person running around trying to, gain control of that.
And more people with fire gear on, if you will, just to suggest that some of these first responders have been able to finally get equipment into that area. And as you said, for a while now, we had not seen the flames now in the foreground of that particular RV right there. And again, the reason why it's still there is because these people have been evacuated. Well, why haven't they moved these? Well, they can't move them because there's nobody there to move them. The residents have long been evacuated. And again, if you're just joining us, the camera shot that you're seeing right now is coming from the top of a brand new luxury apartment complex there on Southton Road near Dunup, to the east of just east of I-37 as you look at it on a map. And all those residents in the apartment complex have been evacuated as well.
And we're keeping an eye on all of these areas. We just to make sure, if you're joining us, Poteet at about 2:35 is when I marked this down. We heard that Poteet has so many power outages that they're closing schools and city offices. So if you're in Poteet in that area, that's why a lot of those places are closed. Ernie, what was the latest CPS numbers? Because it went from, like Ernie said, it's moving in the wrong direction. Earlier this afternoon, it was 184 outages, which was more than 16,000. Right. Where are we at now?
We were at 213 outages affecting 18,000 customers. Okay, went slightly down. Good. 201 outages affecting about 17,000. And again, that's not necessarily just fire related or anything like that. It could be wind related or something from earlier in the day. But we've heard about, again, power outages as it relates to traffic lights being out, and the concern there for people who are out driving right now that they might come across an intersection where a traffic light is not working.
Yeah, and it is really promising, and I'm really happy to see some of these areas like Poteet setting a good example to be proactive in this because of the power issues. Okay. Oh, that's great news.
Great news.
We're just hearing from our producer that we have the crews on scene. John Paul is out there. He said that no structures have been burned. Because when Ernie and I were looking at that earlier, wow, that fire that just came smoking up and shooting up behind that one building made us really nervous that something was on fire.
That's pretty remarkable to think, if you were with us just a half an hour ago, how dramatic the flames were. Now, again, no one's out of the woods, pardon the pun, right now, because these fires, again, are now in the foreground, if you will, in front of these RVs. But we saw people quite literally scrambling, running, throwing, presumably digging little trenches or just whatever they could with their hands, and bare hands in some cases, to try to deflect the fire. And it appears for the moment that those efforts were successful.
Yeah, and because of the vantage point that we have with Luis and now John Paul, it's pretty incredible. It's very rare to be able to see this entire strategy and the entire coverage of these fire crews. We have seen amassed fire crews. There are far more people, but just to see that, hands on the ground, digging and making sure that everything, the debris is cleared. I mean, just earlier at noon, we were saying clear the debris around your house because you just never know. It's pretty incredible to see how all of these crews are coming together regardless of what fire department they're from.
Looks like, I was just going to say, it looks like that gentleman has a water hose in his hand right now.
Yeah.
He's just spraying whatever he can, just as a preventative measure, because he's not very far from the flames. And you can still see just the branches there as they're moving in the wind. And as Courtney's alluded to, the entire time we've been on, if you're looking at the screen, the flames and the smoke are moving from left to right.
Yeah.
And that has not changed since we've been on the air.
Yeah, not that I've seen. And I mean, obviously, Justin was talking about where the winds were traveling, but it seems like they're so gusty that, it looks like they haven't changed. I mean, and we can make that assumption because it's so easy to see. Justin described it as the fire walking or running. And I thought that, I hadn't heard that. I thought that was very a good description, because you can see when that wind gust comes, it is absolutely sideways. Those flames are sideways. And it's just showing, I mean, we're talking 41, 42 mile per hour gusts. Just incredible that, these folks are out there right in the middle of this, because this is very dangerous.
And we saw one camera shot earlier where it appeared that the flames had gone over the highway, right?
Yeah.
And which obviously is not impossible, but just to show you how quickly something like that can happen. But again, we've got Adam Caskey in the house, and he's going to join us here in just a few minutes. Justin did fantastic work, and we appreciate him helping us out here with this coverage, because the entire weather team has called this for a number of days now. We knew the winds were going to be an issue today, and we had our fingers crossed that we weren't going to see something like this, and unfortunately that was not the case.
Yeah, and obviously tracking these winds, Justin told us earlier, and Adam will tell us the same thing, that it's not going to be till around dinner time till these serious winds die down. So I mean, this is when Ernie says it can jump over a road. We saw that in Malibu. We've seen that in California on much larger roads than these roads. So please don't be fooled by thinking you're on the freeway, because this is some serious wind that we're talking about. So just make sure you're keeping yourself safe in that sense.
And we know that first responders are they have their hands full right now, so they may not have law enforcement available to direct traffic or man an intersection with a traffic light that doesn't work. So it's kind of on you, if you're going to be driving in that area, to just be aware of what you might encounter when you're out there.
Yeah, and John Paul had some really good points. It was really hard. It took them a long time to get there because there are so many emergency vehicles. I mean, I feel like everywhere we look, if you look at these, each side has the vehicles kind of spread without this brushy area. But yes, we can see, that's a great shot too. This freeway is open, 37.
That's 37.
That's 37. Right. That's 37, and it is open. So right now, it's clear that a bunch of crews are on scene, command posts are set up. So if they thought that this was dangerous to the freeway, they would be shutting this down. But right now, it seems pretty far away. Speaking in terms of how far the freeway is, but it is moving pretty quickly. So we know that is something that's on their mind.
Well, and they did move the media. They did move the media to, there's a Valero nearby right there at that intersection. I believe there's a Valero on one side of the highway and then a Shell gas station on the other side. So, the media is being staged over there right now, and this does not appear to be ending anytime soon.
Right. And so I know that we were on our streaming on KSAT Plus and KSAT.com. We jumped here on air just to make sure everyone was able to to get this important coverage. But we are going to end our on-air broadcast, but we will still be covering this on KSAT Plus. So please be sure to switch on over if you are not streaming already. And thanks so much for joining us. All right, welcome back. Courtney Friedman, Ernie Zuniga here. Justin, we let him off work, and Adam Caskey is here to help us out with this coverage. We've been covering this for hours since the beginning or middle of our noon newscast. If you weren't on air with us just now, we are covering this massive fire at 37 in Southton, which is making its way across that area.
Multiple scenes as well, that multiple fires that were reported in the entire viewing area. So we'll get to all of that here in just a little bit. But we do want to bring in Adam Caskey here to kind of set the scene. Top of the hour here for those of you joining us, just to get a sense of what's happening out there and what involvement Mother Nature has, Adam, in all of this.
Well, you know, Mother Nature, of course, the weather doesn't start the fire, but once there's a spark of any sort, a fire ignites and then spreads rapidly. Think about a campfire. When you're trying to get it going, what do? You bend down and you blow on it. That adds oxygen to it. I know we expel carbon dioxide, but it gathers oxygen from the air, and then you see the flames flare up. So once there's a fire, this high wind basically just feeds it as if you were blowing on a campfire. Not only that, it also will spread it quickly because embers will get lofted into the air, as you've been talking about, crossover roadways, landed in another dry area, and there you have the cycle all over again, starting a whole new fire. Now, I do think what we see on authority radar, you're wondering why do I have radar up right now? Because our Doppler radar, especially this dual polarized Doppler radar with a vertical and a horizontal beam that goes out into the sky, it can detect smoke particles. And I think what we're seeing right here is that fire from, I think, the Poteet area. Is that right? The one in southern Bexar County?
Jourdanton, Poteet, yeah.
Jourdanton, yeah. Poteet, roughly, give or take. Anyway, this right here may be part of a smoke plume from the hotspot in southern Bexar County and northern Atascosa County. The fire we've been tracking and we've been live on off I-37 near Bronig Lake, that one we don't have exactly the same signature. And I think part of that is because the wind is blowing away the smoke so quickly. It doesn't get very high in the sky for the radar to detect it. Anyway, let's talk relative humidity. So right here, this is the general location of the fire. It's just east of I-35. So now we look at the estimated relative humidity here, and this is our high resolution model data. It's only at 12%. So 12%, so the air is holding, think of it this way, the air is holding 12% of the moisture it can at our current temperature. The higher the temperature, the more moisture the air can hold. That's why we call it relative humidity. So we're only at 12% of the available moisture that the atmosphere could handle at this temperature. And it's that dryness to the air that helps fuel these fires as well, because you don't have the moisture to help tamp it down and keep some of the embers from starting new fires. Not only that, of course, we've been talking about the high winds. I'm going to zoom right in again to the location of this fire and look at our high resolution data here. So it's right here on the east side of I-37, and our high resolution data. These are just the most recent wind speeds. I mean, we're talking steady at 33 miles per hour. That's significant. That's a steady wind. Think of driving down your neighborhood street. You know, the speed limit may be 30 miles per hour. That's how fast the wind is steady. But of course, the gusts are even higher. We've seen wind gusts close to 60 miles per hour just across our area so far today. High resolution model data, and this is interesting. I see a little different color right here near the fire in southern Bexar County, northern Atascosa County. But let's get back to the fire we've been watching near Browning Lake. And now that we have the imagery here, it's easier to tell. And the most recent wind gusts in this area, 49 miles per hour. And the longer I stand here in front of this map, the more you'll see these numbers changing. This is just the high resolution model data, the grid that the computers have laid across our area and taken in the information and estimating the actual wind gusts in this part of town. We'll look at the real wind gusts in a moment, but another look at the power outages. So it's not just Bexar County, but look at this. Around Bexar County, we have multiple counties with at least some degree of power outages. Likely, I think, personally, tree limbs knocking over lines or wires in some neighborhoods. That's usually the case in these situations. That's one reason why power companies like to trim around, you know, when they've got trees over lines or near lines. It's a good idea to trim. Sometimes neighborhoods and HOAs push back, but this is why. One reason why they like to trim, and it's a good thing to do so. But let's go across the state. We're not the only ones. I'm gonna turn off the lightning. That's a little distracting. Sorry, there's some storms moving through Louisiana. But look at Dallas-Fort Worth area. Even more significant power outages from this high wind. Now, some of this could be from storms earlier today. Keep that in mind. But look at that, 34,000, 46,000 just in those two counties there. Our wind forecast our wind really isn't going to simmer down until closer to dinner time. Now, keep in mind, it's going to be a gradual process as well. We're going to see, I think we're about the peak of it right now in terms of the high winds. But as we get through the afternoon and into this evening, our wind gusts will start to subside. Now, I actually disagree with this computer model right here that says by 4 o'clock only 17 mile per hour gusts. I think that's way too low. It's probably going to be higher than that. But this is just a good example of how we will see the winds improve and slacken up a bit as every hour passes. We'll start to see that, but especially closer to and after sunset. Relative humidity. So it will be increasing later tonight. That'll help. It doesn't mean we're completely clear, but it'll help. Now, this is because as the air temperature drops, the air can't hold as much moisture, so the relative humidity percentage actually goes up. So it's going to be above that 20% threshold, which is kind of the benchmark for the extreme fire risk, but gets into the 40th percentile overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning. So that's going to help out tomorrow morning because the temperature is going to drop so much. That actually means the relative humidity will be higher. Okay, check this out. Look at the peak wind gusts today. Del Rio, 62 miles per hour. And again, a wildfire just south of Del Rio. San Antonio International, 46. Hondo, 59 miles per hour for a peak gust. This is why the fires can spread so rapidly. And like y'all were talking about earlier, across a roadway, no problem. That's not enough of a barrier. These embers can get lofted, 100 feet or so or more up into the sky, and the wind just keeps fueling it, pushing it. It lands into another dry area and poof, you got another fire. So that's why these can get out of control so quickly. So I showed you our high resolution model data. I want to show you the actual measurements, which really confirms our in-house models. Stinson Airport, which is closest to the fire we've been watching, 11% relative humidity. Our high-res model was showing about 12%, and that's pretty darn close. Down in Poteet, only 8%, 8% in Pleasanton. Extremely dry air and very dusty. We have the wind coming in from West Texas, and you see the haze in the sky, which is one reason it's difficult if you're on a flyover ramp to actually look south and see the smoke. We have a lot of dust coming in from West Texas. All of Texas, pretty darn dry, especially West Texas and off to the north as well. But we've got similar conditions. The red flag warnings, of course, in effect. I've never liked the title of a red flag warning. What does that mean? Red flags are coming? It means if a fire starts, it's going to spread rapidly. And it's basically guaranteed to. Even just discarding a cigarette out your car window can and often does ignite a fire in these situations. I've seen it along Highway 281, near Bitters Road. All of a sudden, a little poof, flame, and yeah, it's because somebody, on the side road or whatever has actually discarded a cigarette improperly. So fire is spreading rapidly, get out of control quickly. Avoid anything that could cause fire. I know that sounds like the obvious, but sometimes even power tools that send out sparks, could do it. Or if you're using a grinder, right? Even if you just want to sharpen your mower blade, you get your grinder out. Even that little bit of action can actually ignite and trigger one of these fires. Really quickly, can we call up links 2? Links 2 if you get a chance. And okay, so this is a loop. And notice over the past couple of hours, you'll see the fire hotspots flare up. I'm going to step off and zoom in here. But this is the really good high resolution satellite imagery. And right here in Bexar County, and it looks like one actually in Wilson County as well, central Wilson County. There's another hotspot there. I tell you what, I'm going to add the cities here just to give you, there you go. Okay, so this is the fire, the main one we've been watching that flared up, and this is a continuous loop, so that's why you see it disappear. Now it's at current time now. Now it's at current time now, and I can stop it so you can actually see it at the current time. But these are the fire hotspots, and you see others down to the south as well, just west of Alice, LaSalle County, south of Del Rio. That one looks like it's even bigger, with a bigger signature. Not only that, we can switch over to the actual imagery if we have a minute, if you don't mind, if that's okay. I'm going to go back to just, let's do, I tell you what, let's see if the dust works. I want to show you all the dust that's coming in. Okay, you're going to see this increase. See the yellow on this map? Yeah, I know it's a big data request. Thank you, computer. So the yellow on this map is actually the dust that's blown in from West Texas. Now this is causing a big haze in the sky, and it's only going to get worse over the next few hours. This dust plume is coming in, and it's coming in big time. So you're going to notice the dust, extra haze in the sky. Your car is going to get dirty from it, that kind of thing. You may notice it kind of, itchy eyes and stuff. This is that West Texas red dust that likes to move in with these high winds, and that's something that'll just be a factor out there, especially if you have a very sensitive respiratory system. Just know that as that dust blows in, sometimes that can irritate the respiratory system. This is also the dust, whereas if it was raining, I wish it was, but it's not going to. If it was raining, it would give us that muddy rain that leaves that dirty mud residue, on your vehicle, and you're like, I thought it just rained, but everything's dirtier. This is that dust that gets mixed into our atmosphere. We just don't have any rain with it. So that, of course, will be another factor. I'm going to reload some of my graphics here. I've got a few other things. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back in a couple minutes. Thanks.
We continue our breaking news coverage here on KSAT Plus. Courtney Friedman, Ernie Zuniga here. Multiple fires that we're monitoring in Atascosa County, and some news just in a short time ago as it relates to power outages, not necessarily because of fires in Atascosa County, but in Jourdanton, they are having power outage issues at the courthouse there. So for the moment, the courthouse in Jourdanton has been closed due to operations being down right now. So they're going to also the Indigent Healthcare, Veteran Service Office, and Elections Office in Jourdanton are all closed right now because of a lack of power there.
Right. Same thing in Poteet, schools and businesses. We also just got this update. Somerset Brooks families were aware of wildfires in the area, closely monitoring the situation. At this time, all students and staff are safe, and campus operations continue as normal while there is no immediate concern. We want to keep families informed. So we're seeing a lot of proactive messaging, which is really great to see, especially because of the fire. The reason we came on air and we came on this streaming, we've been streaming for hours now, the 37 and Southton fire, that's in South Bexar County, spread rapidly, very close to property. Our John Paul Barajas is there, and we want to get an update from him. John Paul, have you seen this grow at all?
Unfortunately, that's the case. Every few minutes you see another burst of flame, and it looks like the flames are getting bigger and expanding across this large brush area. We're off Southton Road and 37. I want to bring in the property manager here of the Southton Luxury Apartments, Gracie. You've been so nice to allow us on the property and get this vantage point from up here. First off the bat, when you see this so close to the property, what's going through your head?
I just want all of my residents to stay safe, and especially the firefighters that are fighting this crazy fire.
And you were saying that you went down to the command post, you were checking with law enforcement about evacuations, if that was necessary, or what their advice was. What did they tell you?
They did advise us that it was not mandatory for our residents to evacuate at this moment, and we're just waiting to see what changes in the next 30 minutes. We will probably send out an email to our residents letting them know that they can evacuate if they wish, and they can get back on property later as everything dies down.
So not a mandatory evacuation, but it is advised to, if you have somewhere else to go, it's probably best to remove yourself from the current situation.
Yes, we would advise that. It's probably best for our residents to leave.
And then you also have contact with the property management of the RV park. Same type of message there. It's advised to evacuate if possible, but not mandatory.
Yes, that is correct.
We were talking, you say you have family on Old Corpus Christi Road. That is just northeast of here, on the other side of all this brush, sandwiched between 37 and South 181. You said you have family there. They've been asked, they live in a house, they've been asked to evacuate, and that one was mandatory, correct?
Yes, she was asked to evacuate, and that was mandatory. And she said there was smoke all in her home.
When you hear that your family's going through that, has she been able to say anything to you, or what's that communication been like?
I haven't actually communicated with her. I kind of just read it on Facebook, but my prayers are with her and her families that live with her.
Again, this smoke is blowing towards Old Corpus Christi Road. That's probably another reason why the mandatory evacuation is in place over there and not here, at least not yet. Again, very fluid situation. Everything's changing by the minute. You said that you also have another family member or a friend who has a child at a daycare.
Yes.
In that same vicinity. Yes. What are they doing? Kids Country?
Kids Country. My coworker, her kids are in daycare there, and they did evacuate the daycare, and she needed to go pick up her boys from daycare, and that's off of 181 and Donna Road.
So again, lots of moving parts. Everything's changing by the moment. Right now, we here off Southton and 37 at the Southton Luxury Apartments, right next to the Southton Cove Apartments. That's where Fire Command Post is at currently. We have not. Houses, Southton Cove houses are not in a mandatory evacuation at this point in time, but stay with us on air and online because, again, everything is changing by the moment, and with these winds, you never know when another fire could pop up or where the winds can take potentially new fire.
All right, thank you so much, John Paul. And you know,
oh, look at that.
Yeah, this is, and the fact that we can see it this high now, it has not been this high. And yeah, if you guys could stay on these shots, because we do have an update from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. And John Paul, we're glad that you were mentioning what areas are and are not under evacuation orders. We're gonna list off some of the areas, so just keep an ear out if you're in this area. These are the places that are currently below where responders are working on these areas. 13,400 block of Dominic Road in southeast Bexar County near 37 and Southton Road, which is clearly the area we've been talking about for 3 hours now. That is a mandatory evacuation. And then we've got the 24,400 block of Oliver Road and Blackjack Road in South Bexar County near Highway 281 South and Mogford. And then the 15,200 block of Bellin Street in South Bexar County near FM 1937 and Blue Wing Road. This one that I'm about to mention, another mandatory evacuation. The others are not mandatory. 600 block of Duke Road in South Bexar County between Trumbo Road and Pleasanton Road. We reported on this a couple hours ago. This one's the one by the Toyota plant.
Right.
Yeah, and that one we heard through our own sources that there were structures on fire. Again, we're trying to get a crew there. And there's one last one, the 13,000 block of Greenwood Road in Southwest Bexar County. That's near Pearsall Road and I-35 South.
So we're getting, word of these evacuations, and some people maybe think, well, where can these people go? We've just received word of a temporary shelter that is being set up, in particular for the people here at 37 in Southton, but would be open to anybody displaced by any fire concerns. This is at the Mission Espada Fellowship Hall on Espada Road. Again, a temporary shelter that has just been set up for people that have already been evacuated from the RV park, from the luxury apartment complex there on Southton Road and 37. Mission Espada Fellowship Hall on Espada Road. That is a temporary shelter that is up and running.
Yeah, don't take any risks. I know we mentioned some of these are mandatory, but really when we see how far and fast this fire that you're seeing on your screen, I-37 and Southton Road, has spread, we want to do a little comparison for you. When I say we've been covering this for 3 hours, we were on the noon. Justin Horn, Stephanie Cerna, and I were anchoring our noon show a few hours ago, and it was at 12:36 exactly on the dot that Justin looked over at our TransGuide cameras, and there are a lot of them, and noticed just a few flames in one little spot and drew our attention to it. We want to show you, look at your screen right now, how far this has spread, this long line of smoke, and then we're going to pull this soundbite right now for you to show you what we just saw in the very beginning at 12:36.
But those dry conditions could lead to this sort of situation that we have. Let's see, that right there. So I-37 and South Cross. Now I'm not sure what we're looking at here, but when you have a fire like that and you have the wind conditions that we have, this is the concern you could run into.
Yeah, and now look at this. I mean, that was one plume of smoke. It was pretty high in the air. And that building that you saw in that TransGuide shot to the left, I think it was 4 stories, that is where John Paul Barajas is right now. So you can get that view of where he's standing, and now you see that their camera shot. Luis Cienfuegos was there, and that manager that he just spoke to, him and John Paul, was nice enough to let them up into a vacant apartment. A lot of those folks have left, but of course, there's not that mandatory evacuation there yet. We are keeping an eye on that. Our crews always will stay safe in these situations. But yes, those mandatory evacuations we were just talking about, Ernie, so important to heed those warnings. Look how fast this is spreading.
And there's the information on the bottom of the screen of that temporary shelter. The city of San Antonio posted this. They tweeted it out or on X a little while ago, just making this available to people in particular here at 37 and Southton Road near Donop. Just to the east, again, if you're not familiar with this area and you were looking at a map of San Antonio or of Bexar County, it's just south of 410 and just east of 37. Again, I mentioned I have family in Pleasanton, and so I'm familiar with this area, and I've driven by this many times. The vantage point, again, Courtney talked about the apartments. These Southton apartments are relatively new. It's a luxury apartment complex that was built not that long ago. And again, the residents there have been evacuated, but our crew has been allowed to be in there. And so just to kind of paint a picture for those of you in particular who may not be familiar with South Bexar County, we talked about the fire scene near the Toyota plant where evacuations were in order over there. And again, one more time, that temporary shelter has been open now at Mission Espada Fellowship Hall on Espada Road.
And the reason the shelter and getting out of these situations is so important, the reason is what you just saw on the screen. When we zoomed into that smoke, it's not just because of fire danger. The smoke is not safe to inhale. It's not safe to be around, especially if you have respiratory issues, if you have young kids. This is why you heed these warnings. Like Luis just zoomed in right there, and you could barely see what was behind it. This is the darkest I've seen the smoke so far, and I've been watching this for 3 hours. This is is the darkest I've seen it. Now the flames are not near as high, but as Ernie and I have seen happen right in front of us, we think that there's some sort of control of this fire, and then all of a sudden, like Adam and Justin have been saying, a 49 mile per hour wind gust will come, and these flames will be 10 feet in the air.
It is remarkable, though, how we've watched this. So two things that really struck me. One, as it was just pointed out to me in my ear, how far these flames have spread just in the time that I've been out. You've been on the air longer than me. But secondly, that the RV and this park, for the moment, has not been affected.
No.
That it seemingly the flames have kind of worked their way around this complex. And again, they are, unfortunately, I hate to say it, moving closer to our camera, which means they are moving closer to the Southton apartment complex, which again is a brand new luxury. And he's zooming out now. There's obviously some real estate, but again, they are still moving. But to the left of that, where you see that RV park and that the vehicles, the double wides, the triple wides, the RVs, for the moment have not caught fire.
And, you know, you made that point, and we talked about this about 30 minutes ago, where we had said, you know, at least we're seeing the wind hasn't shifted. It was just this one line. And then, of course, now we're seeing it come forward.
Right.
So the wind has clearly shifted in the direction of our cameras, because you can see, even though obviously it's not very green, but you can really distinguish between the charred land behind the fire, where the fire is, and some of the, you know, lighter green hues of some of this vegetation. It is coming through that green area. So we're seeing it. I think that's why the smoke is probably so dark, because it's coming into the area that has not yet burned. And so it is concerning to see the wind change, because we know that can happen at any point in time, but it is pretty incredible. We've seen the massive response to this, that there has been no property damage here, which is what John Paul Barajas told us earlier, that it really is incredible to hear because of the way this fire is spreading.
Now, to be clear, a couple things. John Paul alluded to this earlier, just on his way to the scene, driving from downtown San Antonio south on 37 to get to Southton Road, Dunlop Road. He saw fire crews from Travis County, which is Austin, Waco. So it gives you a sense of just how far help is coming in, you know, seemingly several directions right now. And also, to be clear, this is not the only fire that is being monitored right now. We just happen to have our crew there, and this, for the moment, seems to be the most dramatic, if you will, with people and property in close proximity right now. But there are several fires that we're monitoring right now and have crews at. But again, these are as high as we've seen the flames.
That's live, I assume. Still, this is what we were just talking about. But as this wind is changing direction, that is new vegetation that is now just lighting up. And because the drought, because of the humidity levels being so low that Adam was just kind of telling us about, look at this tree right now. This large tree, we're about to see that consumed by these flames in real time. Unbelievable. This is how dangerous this is. This is spreading so fast. And the winds blowing this tree is what's also pretty powerful to see, that the reason it may be withstanding this is because the tree's bent over right now because of the winds.
We saw, and I know Adam was talking about wind speeds a little while ago, we saw when John Paul was up, the flag at the apartment complex and in the residential neighborhood, blowing, holding on for dear life to that flagpole. I mean, it was just whipping in the wind. And again, people who live in this area know all too well how dry it is. And again, we talked about, and you see there are some of the fire crews that are standing by. So we saw a little while ago San Antonio fire. There's definitely a San Antonio fire presence there right now. But again, it's so difficult to get their large trucks, into that area to try to fight these fires.
You can see those crews right now moving back. This fire just ran right over to them. I know Justin's been saying the fires are running, it looks like, because of the wind. This is so close now to them, and you can see some of the fire crews moving a little bit back. You see one of these trucks over there is now reversing. So good to see that the crews are really using caution, but this is really scary right now. Look, here we go again, where this truck right here is plowing through the fire. You can barely see it because the smoke is so dark, but this was the truck that for the last over an hour has a hose coming out of the right side of it. So as it's driving, there's a large hose that is spraying on the fire. So that's kind of what kept this away from that far RV that Ernie and I were talking about an hour ago that somehow is still safe. But look how close it's getting to these others now. And I think we've been talking about the difference of strategy. You can't get those giant fire trucks in there. So this is the defense strategy they have, is using trucks like that we just saw coming through the brush, having one person with the hose on what it looked like to me was still the right side, and just driving at one point looked like in a circle because the wind, just kind of trying to put that out as they go.
Right. And then typically sometimes you might see them trying to fight this fire aerially, if you will, like from up top. But again, just because of the nature of the real estate out here and the landscape and narrow roads, you see some of the development right there. It's just difficult to get some of these, larger trucks in there with the water and the hoses to try to fight this. Oh,
wow. We are just watching this right in front of us, and this is spreading so fast. You can tell when those plumes get super high, that's spread into new vegetation.
Yeah, so dry, and obviously the winds and everything. Again, because we're coming up on the bottom of the hour here, we are going to step aside here. But again, in terms of concerns with schools in the area, East Central ISD, schools in the Atascosa County District, nothing to report there right now. We'll step aside for a moment, come right back here with our live coverage.
All right, welcome back to this breaking news. We just took a moment to recoup, and it looks like John Paul is waving us down, our producer, because it just got worse. So, John Paul, what are you looking at right now? Wow.
It's been constantly windy the entire day, but throughout the portion of the day, there are larger wind gusts that you can feel, and we just had one not that long ago, and you just get this pit feeling in your stomach, hoping for the best, but unfortunately, we have fires raging now, almost completely connected across this entire way. We've been, as you mentioned, we've been watching it. They've been trying to put it out. There was trucks driving in circles with hoses out, and that large wind gust really seems to have sent them in the wrong direction as far as containment, because this has gotten exponentially larger in the last 5-10 minutes. And it's just almost terrifying to watch. We are still at a safe distance, luckily, but I can speak for myself. When that wind gust came up, you did feel a little bit of heat that we have not felt to this point. So this is, again, dramatic, live, all fluid situation. So make sure to adhere to all advisories from law enforcement and firefighters. We have still not heard anything about a mandatory evacuation where we're at, but obviously it's gotten closer to the RVs. The only good thing about this wind right now is that it seems like it is blowing away from the RVs, but in an instant everything can change. So again, make sure you're staying in contact with the news and what local law enforcement and agencies are saying to you in that area. And if Luis, if you pan over, oh, you're already there. There's a lot of fire personnel speaking to families and those who live at the RV park, as well as firefighters just in the area trying to maintain and make sure it doesn't get any closer than it already is.
Now, John Paul, we've been looking at this from your vantage point, but we're obviously not right there. We've been trying to determine how often this fire is, the wind is changing direction, because at first it looked like it was just all blowing away from the RV park, but it's coming towards you now. Have you seen it change direction multiple times?
Yeah, it seems like every few minutes you get another large gust, and it's coming, to be quite honest, we're in a balcony, so the wind is funneling through a little bit, but it seems like it's coming in all directions, and it just depends on which direction you're going to get on any given wind gust.
All right, John Paul Barajas, up top, if you will, at the Southton Apartments there at 37 and Southton Road. We have our Daniela Ibarra, who is at that same apartment complex, but she's on the ground level right now, and she's joining us. Daniela, what are you seeing from where you are?
Yeah, Ernie, so this is the apartment complex that JP's at. We're actually in the parking lot at the Valero that's right at the corner of 37 and Southton. I want to give you a look of what we're seeing. So
going on.
We've got a couple live shots going, so we're having a little bit of a technical issue, but it's good to see that we have some of these these vantage points. Not sure what the image.
Okay.
The image happening right now. We're going to try to get the technology together. It is out in the rural area, so while we work on that, let's go to Adam. Adam, I know you've been tracking this as well.
Yeah, and I've just got an update from the Texas A&M Forest Service, and they are calling this the Calaveras fire. It is, according to them, as of now, 60 acres and 0% contained.
Wow.
So that's probably the information they're getting from local officials on the ground, and that will keep updating. And that one we were watching in southern Bexar County, almost Poteet, right on the Atascosa County line, that they are calling the Duke fire. But right now they don't have any stats for acreage or containment. It's 0 acres, 0% contained. So I don't know, maybe it's still too new, or they don't have the boots on the ground to relay that information quite yet. Okay, so I'm showing you you've got the live shot up of the fire, which is good, but I'm also going to share with you some of the TransGuide traffic information. Look at that. See these new flames, and there's a lot of fuel there out in that field. Dry grass, brush, and trees. Earlier we were seeing little delays on Highway 181 here, probably from the smoke, because the air is blowing west to east, and so it's crossing over 181, maybe even this yellow area here near Calaveras Lake on 181, headed to the southeast. That brief little slowdown could be a result of the blowing wind. Now here's a look at the TransGuide, and you see this is a small screen, but I know we have it bigger, and if you want to call it up, just call it up. Even on TransGuide, you can see, looking off to the east, the smoke off in the distance from I-37 and Southton Road. And one thing I want to point out with this video full screen, first of all, look at the law enforcement presence, and also the flag toward the middle of the screen, just a little off center to the right. It is whipping. It is still whipping because they have a steady wind around 23 miles per hour. Okay, let's talk about the winds. This graphic just updated. This is the speed. This is the steady wind speed. 28 miles per hour at Stinson Airport, not far from this fire. 30 Poteet, 33 Floresville. Kelly Field measuring 33 miles per hour. Now here's the forecast as we go through time. By 6 o'clock, we'll see those steady wind speeds drop down into the upper teens. And then by 9 p.m., so after sunset, we'll see the steady winds drop below 10 miles per hour. I think by 9 p.m., that's the time when we'll see the threat of these fires spreading really diminish. Now, they could still be burning, and they could still spread a little bit, but they won't have as much assistance from the wind and the relative humidity and the dryness of the air. And then we get into tomorrow when we get some north winds at about 15. Not as bad as today, and relative humidity will be a little bit higher tomorrow. The wind gusts are a totally different story. We'll likely be gusting to about 45 miles per hour through 5 p.m. By 9 p.m., gusting closer to 20 miles per hour. So by 9 o'clock, a steady west wind at about 10 miles per hour, and then occasional gusts up to 20. But once that sun sets and the temperature falls, the relative humidity, the moisture content, relative to how much the air can hold at the given temperature, the moisture content, that percentage is going to be rising, and it'll get above that 20% threshold by about 9 p.m. Latest wind gusts 40 miles per hour, Stinson, 40 Kelly Field, Poteet 44, and we've seen gusts in the 60 mile per hour range elsewhere across the KSAT 12 viewing area. Notice the relative humidity down to 10%. So at the given air temperature, because this is all relative to how much water the air can hold at a given temperature. The air can hold more water in the heat and less water in the cold. So at our given temperature, 76 degrees, the air is holding 10% of the water that the air is capable of holding. That just gives you an idea of how dry, and that's why we call it relative humidity. Very different from the dew point temperature, relative to how much moisture the air can hold at our given temperature. Also, the fire out west near Del Rio. Now, this computer model hasn't, I think, accounted for the fires that recently popped up, since the noon hour. But the one out just south of Del Rio, the forecasted smoke plume carrying the smoke to Cotulla, then all the way down to Corpus Christi by 6:45 p.m., assuming that fire is still active. I don't have any information on that. That was just if that fire is still active, that smoke plume would be over Cotulla and then Corpus Christi within a few hours. So I look at a 30 radar because sometimes we can see the particulates in the air from the fires. The ash and embers, and I think for a brief period of time, we actually did see some of the Duke fire, which is Southern Bear, Northern Atascosa. I think we saw a little bit of that smoke. Here's that plume, and poof. That could have been some of the particulates in the air that can be detected by Doppler radar. So the actual relative humidity, high resolution data, here's Southton Road. Okay, I-37 and Southton Road, the fire is basically in this grassy area. And according to our high-res models that update very frequently, it's a 10% relative humidity. And that is exactly in line with the actual psychrometer measurement at Stinson Airport just up the road. Steady wind speeds, the persistent wind, this is not gusts, this is continuous wind. Models estimated in this neighborhood about 30 miles per hour. So that's pretty significant. Here's Southton Road, and there's I-37, and the fire's in this general vicinity. And the wind speeds are estimated with our high-resolution data to be at 20 to 30 now. You look at the gusts, and the most recent gusts, according to our model, would be about 40 miles per hour. And that seems to jive pretty closely with the actual anemometers out there. Now, this is interesting because power outages, because most likely limbs, branches, hitting some power lines, downing power lines. That's usually what happens in these situations when it comes to power outages. And you look at the numbers. Now this is not directly from CPS Energy, okay? But you look at the number here, and it's an estimated 16,000 customers without power in Bexar County. You go to Wilson County, estimated 800. Atascosa County, 1,500 customers. In Medina County, about 1,000 customers without power. Guadalupe County, about 800 customers without power. But that's just part of the story. We're just a little small part of the power outages. Look at the big picture. Across the state, combination of storms and these windy conditions knocking out power. Let's go over to Houston, right? Let's go into Houston, and in the Houston area, 26,000 customers estimated without power. It just gives you an idea of the scope, and even Travis County has a similar count to us. Okay, here's the satellite imagery, and the red dot here and the red dot here in the middle of the screen, those are the active fires, and it still looks like, yes, the fire is very active south of Del Rio. That's another hot spot. This is just looking at the hot spots for it. But also, you see this kind of gray color come in? That is the West Texas dust that's moving in. It is going to get very hazy very quickly. You're already noticing it in the hill country. It's already starting to roll into San Antonio, but that's a plume of dust that's coming in from West Texas that we're going to be dealing with here for a few more hours. And coming up later, we'll get into the actual just satellite imagery, not those special filters. I want to show you the relative humidity, how it changes tonight. By 9 p.m. or after 9 p.m., we're going to likely get above that 20% threshold. 20% is usually that benchmark when it comes to these extreme fire conditions and spreading fires. Because as the air temperature drops, the cooler the air gets, the higher the relative humidity. And you see how that rises up into the 30th and 40th percentile tomorrow morning. All right, peak wind gusts today, 46 miles per hour at San Antonio International. Del Rio, 62 miles per hour. Think of it this way. A severe thunderstorm would have a wind gust or winds of 58 miles per hour or greater. We're seeing non-severe thunderstorms, so non-thunderstorm wind gusts at that severe wind threshold, for to be classified as a severe thunderstorm. Red flag across most of the state. You get the idea here. Latest gust at the airport, checking in at 46 miles per hour. Bottom line, I think, Ernie and Courtney, I think 9 p.m. is probably a pretty good cutoff time to where the weather will cooperate a lot more to help fight these fires. Now we're kind of in the thick of it, and I think we're nearing the peak and the pinnacle of the weather really not cooperating, but it will start to 9 p.m. and thereafter.
All right, that is a long time, but we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on when those winds die down.
I was just struck by how this fire has a name now.
Yes, it does.
Calaveras fire.
Which,
I'm going to get the latest data once.
Yeah, I mean, when's the last time you heard a fire in our area with a name on it? And as Adam said, it's 0% contained right now, the Calaveras fire. And again, these are live pictures. Courtesy of our crew, we've got John Paul Barajas, who we saw him in the parking lot a moment ago with presumably a resident from this apartment complex. Some of them may be evacuated, but we talk about evacuations, and now these people have at least 2 places to go. These 2 temporary shelters that have been opened up. One, Mission Espada Fellowship Hall on Espada Road. There's the address there. And the second one, more recently opened up on Hickory Haven. That is the Sandy Oaks Community Center. So again, for anyone affected by these grass fires, but in particular, the people there at 37 and Southton Road.
Before we go to break, Adam, did you have an update on the Calaveras fire, it really is a big deal to hear that we have a named fire here that just sparked up just a few hours ago. You reported earlier 60 acres?
Yeah, and Texas A&M Forest Service has the same acreage right now, 68 acres, and still 0% contained. That's another important number. And think of the naming kind of like we do hurricanes. It's a way to organize them and to historically track them and study them. And so yes, this has been named the Calaveras fire.
And the other one, the Duke fire, you said?
Yes, and still no new information on that. And I don't even know if that's still very active.
Okay.
That's the one by the Toyota plant.
Yeah, Southern Bear.
Okay, well, we're going to regroup for a second, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. We're going on hour 3 pretty much of following this massive fire, now called the Calaveras fire, over in Southton and 37. We did have Daniela Ibarra, and we're going to try to go back to her right now. Daniela, you are at the corner, the Valero at the corner of Southton and 37.
Yeah, Courtney, we're in the parking lot of that. This apartment complex is the one that I believe JP's been reporting on for the past couple of hours. From where we're standing, we've been able to see the plumes of smoke every couple of minutes. It seems like it gets darker and then it kind of fades away like we see right now. I want to point you down the street. That way you can see the flashing lights right here. We've seen a couple of different fire engines make their way down the street. We also saw one go into the apartment complex right here. but this street is Southton, and officials have had it shut down. When we pulled in, we had to pull in through the Valero on the side. There's only been a couple of cars that have been allowed to go down the road that don't look like they're emergency vehicles. I got here about 25 minutes ago. Haven't gotten the chance to talk with many people, but photojournalist Alexis Montalvo did. She's been here for a little bit over an hour, and she says she talked with a man who had evacuated from a subdivision that's down that road. He has a house down there. He evacuated with his daughter and his dog, and when Alexis was talking with him, she said that he started getting a bunch of alerts on his phone, which is something that we got when we pulled into the area. Alerts saying that there was a wildfire growing rapidly in the area and urging people to evacuate. One thing that Alexis said that stood out to her is that he said, you know, his house is just a house, it's replaceable, which is why he left with his daughter and his dog. But you might be able to hear it on the microphone. The wind's whipping out here. It is pretty gusty out here.
Who's out there?
And like I said, there's been not, we haven't seen that much activity in the past couple of minutes. You might see the little haze back there, but of course we're going to continue to stay out here, hopefully get to talk to some more people as they make their way out of that neighborhood and that apartment complex. But I'll send it back to you.
All right, Danielle Ibarra reporting for us live there right in front of the Southton Apartments. Again, that luxury apartment complex that is relatively new and eerily close to the flames right now, so we'll keep an eye on all of that. As are we monitoring the CPS Energy outages right now. As we speak, 198 outages affecting just over 15,500 customers.
So it has gone down a bit. Sean, are we looking at the Duke fire now? Okay. All right. I know that we've been looking at this 37 and Southton Road. There is another fire that is called the Duke Fire. That's on Duke and Trumbo Road. And that's the one, Ernie, that we've been talking about over by the Toyota plant area. We do have a crew over there, so they're going to let us know back in the control room. Oh, there it is. Yep. So this is the Duke Fire. Also an officially named fire. The other one, the Calaveras Fire. We are a little further back from this one, so we can't see the flames, but that smoke is pretty high in the air.
And again, just to call people's attention, kids are getting out of school right now, and they're no doubt going to see this, especially if you're on the south side of town or whatever, and you're going to wonder what's happening right now, and perhaps you'll want to be distracted while you're driving and everything. We talked about that and the issue of power outages, especially in some of these smaller communities, Jourdanton, Pleasanton, Poteet, where they are reporting power outages affecting traffic lights. Right. And in many cases, you have intersections that have no law enforcement there to direct traffic, and so just a refresher, it seems like common sense, but if you do come to an intersection with a non-working traffic light, you're supposed to treat it as a four-way stop.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. We're going to stay on this live shot, but on the note that you just said, Ernie, we're going to run down the Poteet. Oh, okay. We actually are getting word that we are hearing from fire officials. So
I know we're going to stay out here all night just to make sure that the fire completely extinguished.
What about
That's
evacuation?
Valerie Frausto, the fire chief. Yes.
That is hard to say right now. It just depends on wind speed and fire containment. And we'll continue to work at the hot spots, but we'll likely lift the evacuation as soon as possible. We do have a shelter set up at Mission Espada. So residents in the area were notified via mass notification system to evacuate the area. They were also provided with the evacuation shelter location. But once we have more information, we'll continue to keep everybody updated on conditions and when it's safe to return to their homes.
In your experience, have you ever seen anything like this before?
I actually have, but it's been a long time, and wind speed today, like I said, it is really, really difficult to manage a fire like this.
Any idea of the cost?
Come through this area with questions of what they should do, where they should go. What would you say to those people who keep no attention here?
I would say if you're in or you live in this area to stay away for now or to go to the evacuation shelter because with the wind speed it's very difficult to determine the direction of the fire and if it's going to spread or not. It always has a potential.
Do we have any idea as to what caused it, or did you already touch on that? I'm sorry.
No, I have not touched on that, but no, it is. We don't have a fire cause at this time or an origin.
Any idea how much acreage did burn out of that 1 to 2 square miles?
No, I have no idea. I would say it is contained, so I'll have...
Contained?
yeah, okay.
Hopefully
So
in the next hour or so.
We keep seeing these. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. We keep seeing these large plumes of black smoke occasionally. Is that any concern?
No, sir. That is actually part of the containment process, and that's actually fires that are being lit by crews on scene, just to kind of force the direction of the fire.
And what tactics have you guys used? Have you been cutting lines around the fire, or how did you guys work to contain it?
Recognizing just areas that are good fire breaks, and that being either roadways or there's also some train tracks back there, but it did jump over the tracks at some point because of the winds.
And how confident are you in the fact that this fire won't or might not reignite as the day keeps going and winds continue?
It is very hard to say, but units are on top of it, and they're doing a great job with containment, and they're being very aggressive. So I really don't suspect that that's going to be an issue.
And I'm so sorry if you already said this, but were any homes affected by the fire?
Yes, we had, 2 mobile homes, 2 residential homes, and a shed involved in fire. So I think maybe a total of 5 or 6.
Do you expect that to grow at all?
No, I do not. No. At this time, there are no other homes that are threatened by fire.
Do you know about how many people were affected by the evacuation order overall?
I do not, but I'm waiting on that number. As soon as they get to the shelter, I'll get updated with a count. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
San Antonio Fire Chief Valerie Frausto, just on the job since the beginning of November. And Danielle Ibarra, they're standing by as she just got to listen. But some interesting insight there, a few takeaways.
Yeah.
When we saw some of that black smoke earlier and we thought maybe there was a structure on fire, it appears now that was part of the kind of the firefighting efforts.
Really good insight, because we were talking about that. As the wind blew, we would see some of these bursts of black, and we were hoping it wasn't property. But a big piece of what we just heard, we had heard from the beginning from KSAT sources that there were structures on fire. We knew that hours ago, but the chief just confirmed 2 mobile homes, 2 residential homes, and a shed, at least that we know of. So maybe 5 or 6 structures did catch fire in the Duke fire.
And again, the Duke fire, not to be confused with what we're looking at right now, which is now the so-called Calaveras fire, which I think the chief mentioned briefly about containment. So we need to get some clarification on what level of containment, if any, there is right now. I know, Adam, that's something that you've been monitoring as well.
Yeah, and she mentioned contained, so maybe they do have a contained, and I think when she said those are fires to control the fire, there's some prescribed burns that they're doing to help direct the fire, like she said, into a way where they can contain it easier and then extinguish it, and of course stick around, like she said, through the night to keep an eye on it so there's no reignition. But I want to bring you over to the maps. I'm going to show you on our satellite mapping exactly where this fire is. Let's go to links 1, please. I think this is links 2, but anyway, you see this? That's dust coming in from West Texas, y'all. A lot of dust. It's going to be flying in. Anyway, links 1, here we go. Okay, downtown San Antonio up here, upper left side of the screen. Let's go to exactly where this fire is. It's actually closer to Braunig Lake than it is Calaveras Lake, but A&M Forest Service gave it the name Calaveras Fire. Either way, that's just a way to track it and historical records. So I-37 and Southton Road. Okay. It is in this whole field area right here. So I'm going to so remember when we were looking at the mobile homes and RVs? I'm going to redo that. So I'm going to circle it. So it's basically this area where we have the fire. The new apartments, we're going in right here. I'm going to put an A for the apartments and an F for the fire. Okay, so that's where we have it. Now, keep this in mind, that's where we're looking, and I want to zoom out, and if this fire were to continue to spread, and that's a big if it were to continue to spread, the wind would carry it and most likely spread it eastward here toward Strike Road. And you can see some homes right along Strike Road. So that's something that, of course, we'll be monitoring and watching as the firefighters are fighting to contain it, and the weather's not cooperating until we get towards sunset, and especially thereafter by about 9 p.m. But this is the area that we've been seeing burn, and then with the weather, and the wind, it would then spread it eastward. So that's just to give you an idea of exactly where we're looking out here. on the map. I know you see the live pictures, but there we are on the map. And relative humidity with our high resolution data here, right here in this spot, still extremely low at only 12%. We need to get above that 20% threshold in order to have the weather start to help us rather than make things worse. Steady wind speed, this is not a gust. The steady wind speeds estimated about 30 miles per hour. And this is a high resolution model data basically that blankets our area in grid points and analyzes incoming data to then give us these estimates. But so far they've been pretty close to the true measurements nearby. Latest gusts as of now, we're looking at about 43 miles per hour. That's what's, again, estimated by the model data, but pretty much in line with what we've been seeing. Power outages, we talked about it. We'll keep an eye on the CPS number. This is a number that's not directly from CPS, but now it's increased. In my data set, it's increased to 18,000 customers in Bexar County. So just something to consider. The outage map from CPS says 12,000. Different sources, whatever. Here's a look at the dust that's coming in. This is coming in from West Texas. This haze, that's not cloud cover. That's a dust plume. This haze is a dust plume that's moving in, and this dust plume already in the hill country. If you're looking northwest of town right now, you're going to see a significant haze in the air because of that West Texas dust that's blowing in. Now I'm going to switch over before we sign off here. I'm going to switch over really quickly to the product that shows the fires. And this is an animation, so you don't see it at first, but there you have it. The red dots on this screen are the active fires. And I'm going to stop it there. There we go. So here's the Calaveras fire, and then we have the Duke fire, and then just north of San Marcos, another fire. West of Bay City, another fire. Look at this. Just outside of Corpus Christi Bay, another fire. Just west of Alice, and even a few in Mexico. Now I'm thinking this one that we've been tracking south of Del Rio may actually be in Mexico, which is one reason why we don't have any information on it. That's just my assumption. I don't know. I don't have any confirmation of that, but these are the fire hotspots that we have right now. We're gonna have to take a quick break and get ready for the 5 o'clock news on KSAT and KSAT Plus and KSAT weather app. We're going to continue to stream though. We're going to keep this up and we're going to continue to stream this and keep these live pictures up for you and keep you updated.
A massive wildfire started at 37 and Southton Road. That is in South Bexar County. It is now called the Calaveras Fire. It now has a name by the A&M Forestry Service. They said at least 60 acres have been burned. They said there is 0% containment, but we know that the fire chief just spoke with us, San Antonio Fire Chief Valerie Frausto, and our crews were on scene. Our Daniela Ibarra was there. Yes, Daniela, we are tracking a few of these other fires, but you just heard you're over on the corner at the Valero, right near that fire.
Yeah, so we just spoke with the fire chief, Valerie Frausto, and I mean, you can hear how fast the wind is whipping out here, but the fire chief was able to give us some updates. I know you mentioned 0% contained. She said it was contained. She couldn't give us a percentage, referred us to check online at that website that you were talking about earlier. We also asked her how many homes were affected by this fire that they're tracking down the street right here, and she said about 5 to 6 some mobile homes in there. She couldn't tell me if it was something that, you know, the fires are completely took over those homes or not. But I want to give you a look at where we're standing right now. Like Courtney mentioned, we're at the Valero that's off the corner of 37 and Southton. This is the apartment complex that John Paul Barajas has been reporting live from for the past couple of hours or so. The fire chief did say that this apartment complex wasn't affected by the fire. She said it was not at risk. She also mentioned that the people who evacuated from this area, she's not really sure when they could return. She said it could be as early as tonight, but of course that's still up in the air. She urged people to go to those shelters that, Courtney, I know you were talking about earlier during the stream, but you can see down here the flashing lights, the fire engines that are out there working to contain these fires. But like I said, the fire chief said that the fire down here is contained, didn't have a percentage, and she did say that 5 to 6 homes were affected down here. And she also mentioned that there's a subdivision down here, and she didn't say that those homes were in that subdivision right there.
All right, thank you so much, Daniela. And you pointed up to that apartment complex. That's where John Paul Barajas has been for a couple hours now with an incredible vantage point. John Paul, what are you seeing right now? I know you've seen this fire spread pretty quickly.
Well, just throughout every moment, this fire gets closer and closer to the fence line. Luis, you can pan right in front of us. We have crews actively in that brush, driving up and down it, firefighters on foot using their hoses to try and contain, put the fire out, as well as wet down whatever vegetation still stands between us and that flame, as well as in the parking lot. You have multiple fire trucks lined up here, standby, ready to go all the way down. We have EMS on hand as well. We've also seen them check out that fire hydrant there that seems to be working. That crew, that is a sign to me that we are still okay, because that crew, like I said, is very calm. They're standing by, still waiting on when or if they'll need to jump into action. Another good thing is just moments ago, we had active flames. I'm sure there still are some close to us, but it's harder to see. There are some to the left over there, but directly in front of us, it seems like it's mainly just charred field and grass. And Luis, you guys have been live streaming since 1, 2 o'clock, since the noon show. Just see how far you can see charred brush and vegetation throughout this entire field. I know Courtney mentioned it earlier today that I think Justin Horn, our meteorologist, saw it, small flames around 12:36 hours later. The devastation and damage that's already been done. Again, here at the Southton Luxury Apartments, we are not under a mandatory evacuation. We've been speaking with the property manager here, and she says that it has been recommended to leave. We've seen a handful of people already take off, grabbing their belongings and leave from here, but there are still a handful of other people like us standing on their balconies, just kind of taking in the view and seeing exactly what's unfolding in front of their eyes as this continues to develop, and that there are still several hot spots scattered throughout this entire field.
Yeah, John Paul, thanks for making sure you're letting us know that you're safe and not under a mandatory evacuation order. We've been talking about those mandatory evacuation orders. It is for this area. Obviously, you said, JP, about that RV park, clearly right where the fire is. You have this incredible vantage point that we're so grateful for, because we're looking at these shots of the crews right there in the line of the fire. We have seen over the last 3 hours some of those trucks come through the brush, almost looking straight into the flames with that hose on the right side. Are you still seeing those trucks in there? Can you tell how many there might be?
We see the one that we're looking at right now, and you got at least two firefighters on foot to the right of it. Then if we pan all the way over to the left, they've been driving up and down, but there's another one closer to the RV park. It seems like it's pulling out. but there are still active flames in between us and that second unit over there. Those are the only two that I can spot right now, but obviously they are constantly moving and constantly working as this is still actively growing, and they're continuing to try and put out as much of it as possible.
As far as you can see, JP, over where those the RV park is, because that was a huge focus, because that fire was feet away from that RV that's kind of separate towards the very back. Is that fire still very close, or is it moving forward towards you instead? Because we know the winds have changed so often.
So I'd say probably 30 minutes ago, Luis, if you can kind of spot where that picnic table once was, there's no longer people there. But at one point it looked like there was people at a picnic table, and the flame was probably 4 to 5 feet. Granted, we're very far away, so maybe not the right measurements, but it looked like it was just within a leap's distance of people sitting at a picnic table. Those flames have since been put out. You can still see a lot of charred grass and vegetation close to those RVs, but it looks like everything has moved away, and it's kind of burned through pretty much everything almost up to the point of that RV park, and has now shifted closer towards us. Right in front of to the left here, we have firefighters putting out live flames. They seem to put out all the flames directly in front of us, but over here to the left, they still have quite a bit of work to do. But again, all the firefighters in the parking lot of the complex we're in, all on standby. They haven't jumped in yet, so it does seem like they have it under control, or at least they feel like they have everything under control around us at this point.
Yeah, and these vantage points are so important, because it's very rare that we are able to see the strategy of a crew fighting a wildfire. Look at that. I mean, that gust of wind just blew those flames up like 10 feet in the air, and I'm sure you can see that, JP. How often is that happening? Because as you said, it was 12:36 when Justin spotted just a little bit of smoke on our TransGuide camera, and look what it's turned into. But it's every once in a while there's that gust of wind. Is that happening often now, or is it less common that you see that 10-foot plume come up?
I think it's going to start to slow down just because the amount of vegetation that's already been burned through, but throughout the time we've been here, it has been a common occurrence. I mean, we talk about seeing the fire climb trees and completely engulf trees that are now no longer standing. And so it is unfortunately more common than we would like, and I'm sure that the firefighters would have liked. But because of the amount of burning that's already been going on, I think it will slow down a bit, at least in this vicinity.
Yeah, and it's so incredible, like I was saying before, to get this vantage point because of the way these firefighters are strategizing. We know that firefighters from Travis County, which is Austin, and Waco are here helping fight this fire. It started out with just Bexar County and some volunteer fire departments. We know that a lot of these folks are volunteers, incredible work that they're doing. But then SAPD was called in with a lot more manpower, some bigger trucks, and they are the lead now, the lead agency on this. But the response has been incredible, and I would venture to guess that's why a lot of that property that we've been so nervous about for hours has not burned down yet. Because I can imagine, are you seeing more people streaming in? We know how many trucks you saw on the way down to get there.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one?
Yeah. Are you seeing more crews coming in, or are they really just set in place right now? Because we know when you were headed down here, there were so many trucks that it was a little backed up.
There was definitely numerous trucks as we were driving to the southeast, South Bexar County. It still looks like it's roughly the same amount, but granted, they are shifting in all different locations. I'm taking a look over to the right from a different vantage point just to see command post. Command post still looks as big as it was when we first arrived, but obviously from when we started, there was no fire trucks inside the apartment complex parking lot that we're in, again, the South 10 Luxury Apartments. But now there is at least 2 trucks, an ambulance, and another EMS unit, again, all on standby, waiting to see where this fire goes and how much further it will go. But again, it's just been incredible to see how fast it's moved and how close it's gotten to this fence line. And again, this is a testament to the work that these individuals do and putting their lives on the line. We feel totally at ease and comfortable given how calm they are directly in front of us as they're battling these active flames and have a second line of crew members behind them waiting to step in if need be.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. If you're just joining us, John Paul Barajas is here on the 4th story or 3rd story of an apartment complex that is right next to this now named Calaveras fire at 37 in Southton. Are you still, John Paul, if you can still hear me, are you still in contact with that apartment manager? I know that she let you step into that vacant apartment and that there is not an evacuation mandatory order for your building that you are in. We want to make sure the viewers know that you're safe and you're in a building that is not mandatory evacuation. But are you still in contact with that manager?
Yeah, she actually just stepped out of the complex. She and her partner have been getting a lot of paperwork out of their office just as a precaution. But again, we've been in contact with her. She's in this golf cart getting ready to leave right now. If you continue going to the left there, Luis, will put you in a bad spot for a vantage point. But she says that she's been in contact with the fire command here, and that right now, again, no mandatory evacuation, but it is recommended. Again, we have seen a handful of people take off and pack up all their belongings, including clothes, TVs, obviously pets. But we also seen a handful of people come and peek out onto the balconies and just kind of take in this view as we're doing ourselves. But right now, we seem to be in a safe spot, and everyone who is at this complex is advised to leave if you can, but it is not mandatory.
All right, thank you so much, John Paul, and we'll keep checking in with you as you have this great view of this massive fire that seems to be continuing to grow by the second. Talking about those mandatory evacuations, a lot of people are being directed to these temporary shelters. There are 2 of them, Mission Espada Fellowship Hall, which is at the 10,040 block of Espada Road, and Sandy Oaks Community Center, which is at 4451 Hickory Haven. So you don't have to be in a mandatory evacuation to go to these shelters. If you feel that your house is not safe to be at, or you feel like there's too much smoke, please take advantage. That's why these are opening. And you know, we're going to keep you updated if any more open. But right now, these are 2 that we know some of the people that are under a mandatory evacuation order are heading to. And please, if you have someone in your family with respiratory issues or you have young children, take advantage of these shelters. They're ready and waiting for folks to come in. We've been talking, of course, about the Calaveras fire, but we want to show you right now. This is a live picture of the Duke fire, another one that is an extensive fire. We're not as close, but you can see those plumes of smoke. We just spoke with the chief, the fire chief at SAPD. She's brand new, Valerie Frausto, and she was explaining that at this fire, 2 mobile homes, 2 residential homes, and a shed at minimum. So she guessed about 5 or 6 structures were on fire. And hours ago, when we started coming on and streaming this, we heard from an inside source from law enforcement at KSAT that there were properties on fire. And so she was able to confirm that to us. And, you know, she also said that she was hoping to lift evacuation orders as soon as possible. But if you are in the Duke area, she said, quote, "Stay away now if you live in this area." So the Calaveras fire at 37 in Southtown and this one at Duke Road are both the 2 that have mandatory evacuation orders in the communities surrounding it. So you can see those flames. These are the 2 fires that are of most concern right now. I did want to mention, we can stay on these shots because I'm not sure that we have video of this one, but the Old Pleasanton Road and Camelot Lane, there is apparently another fire that's in Atascosa County. It came in as reports of multiple house fires at Old Pleasanton Road and Big Leaf Road. Now that's only a couple streets away from Camelot Lane, so we want to make sure that people in that area know, in the Atascosa County area, to avoid that area. The high winds are not just in some of these other areas where these fires currently are. There are fires cropping up all over the place, so we are trying to stay focused on the biggest ones, but of course we want to make sure you know as we get information about the ones cropping up. Old Pleasanton Road and Camelot Lane. If you are evacuating from that area, you can use 2 of those 2 same shelters. We're keeping an eye on both of these devastating fires, and we're going to take a quick break, but we will be right back with more coverage. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. So we've been showing you these incredible images of these massive fires just growing before our eyes and have been for hours. But something else that we've been watching and keeping a close eye on are the power outages. We know that's affecting so many people in this region. Right now at 4:20, there are 195 outages affecting 10,000 people. Now we've been keeping track of this, so I've written down every about 15 minutes or so. Just back at 3:45, there was 191, but that was affecting 15,500 people. So we are seeing the outages sometimes increase. It's a little bit tricky, but the number of people affected have gone down. So whatever that outage is, it may affect fewer people. If there's an outage that's in an area that's very populated, then there are going to be more customers that are out of power. So it's looking like some of them are smaller areas. And on that note, some of these areas like Poteet that we've been reporting since 2:37, that they don't have power in a lot of areas, so they closed their schools and city offices a couple hours ago now. And we've got Somerset Brooks said that they're aware of the fires. They're keeping an eye on the power outages. Atascosa County, power issues at the courthouse. So this is widespread. The CPS outages map is something we are keeping an eye on, as our meteorologists have talked about earlier. Stephanie and I, and then Ernie and I were talking about how dangerous these power lines can be when things are so dry and the wind is so bad. Adam Caskey earlier was talking about how the most common cause of these outages are limbs falling onto the power lines. But if these power lines hit the ground or spark something, the repercussions are incredible, and we're seeing how fast this wind is moving and taking the fires with it in multiple locations. So the live look that you have right now is at I-37 and Southton Road, and this is the biggest one that we're talking about. The Calaveras fire is the name it's been given by the Texas A&M Forest Service. So Caskey was saying how they name these larger fires so that they can keep a historical record of them, but also to organize the data. So we know about at 3:30, it was 60 acres. The containment level, we're a little iffy on. So even though it originally said 0%, we don't know the reporting process. Who did talk about the containment was San Antonio Fire Chief Valerie Frausto, who we did a press conference when our Danielle Ibarra was there at the corner at that Valero. And we want to bring you some of the things that she said.
It is extremely challenging, and right when we think we have it contained, there's hot spots that units continuously try to extinguish, and it's just it's very difficult to contain a fire like this.
Yeah, so basically she was saying that it's hard to say the containment levels, but she said they were getting a hand on it, even though sometimes it may not seem like it. And this is what we've seen for 3+ hours now. It was 12:36. This afternoon when we were live in the noon show, and Justin Horn happened to look over at the TransGuide cameras, and there are a lot of them, and he said, "Hey guys, I think I see some smoke coming from the 37 and Southton camera," and it went from that to this. So look at the picture on your screen right now. Massive devastation already, 60+ acres. And then we pulled some sound from earlier about how this started. Take a look.
But those dry conditions could lead to this sort of situation that we have. Let's see, that right there. So I-37 and South Cross. And I'm not sure what we're looking at here, but when you have a fire like that and you have the wind conditions that we have, this is the concern you could run into.
But we're sure now. Look at the difference. It's unbelievable. All of that land that was, not super green, but definitely not charred. It's a huge difference. And if you noticed on that shot where we just aired Justin figuring out the TransGuide shot, what was on there, there was a building to the left, a few stories. That is the apartment complex, Southtown Apartments, a brand new complex. And that is where John Paul and photojournalist Luis Cienfuegos have been for hours. And so just the vantage points that we're able to get, because at first when we looked at this, it was difficult to see what area we were in, but being able to see the TransGuide shot where Daniela is, where John Paul is, it kind of gives us a sense of this kind of square or triangle area that you're looking at right now in this live shot, the charred area, so we can see where this fire's been. And luckily we've been able to get multiple angles of it. So our crews are doing a great job out there. We are going to take a quick break, but we've got more information for you coming up. Welcome back. Our continuing breaking news coverage of these fires. Now, we've been talking a lot about the Calaveras fire at 37 and Southton, and of course the Duke fire, and that is at Duke Road and Trumbo Road. That's the one over by the Toyota plant. So look at this screen right now. We've created a map for you of the fires that are really the biggest priority in red, and in black, those are the temporary shelters that have been set up. So the locations of those shelters are extremely helpful because these fires that are cropping up are in different areas. This is all south, so we can see where it's getting hit with the hardest winds in these problem areas, and why these crews might be stretched thin, because there are so many crews out there who are volunteer fire departments, very small departments, which makes sense as to why Travis County, which is Austin, and Waco, those fire departments responded hours ago. So they came to help out, and this map kind of shows why that is, because you see 5 fires that we're tracking, and those are just the large ones. The small ones are cropping up all over the place. So that's why fire danger is so important. And we know it sounds really obvious, but please, cigarette safety. Do not be throwing your cigarettes out the window. When you're dragging chains on the ground, so important to not be letting your chains drag. Don't be parking and starting a car on top of grass. That one is surprising to some people, but if you're in a rural area, sometimes it's hard not to park on brush, but really be mindful, because these winds, I believe when we were here about 30 minutes ago, Adam Caskey was saying they hit 49 miles per hour. So a steady 35 miles per hour, but the gusts were almost at 50. So it's incredible just to see how these are, spreading so fast. It was only 12:35 when we kind of noticed that the smoke was heavy, and then all of the sudden, the shots that we've been showing you, the immense amount of fire, and the ones that are cropping up. So the one that is newest that we haven't been talking as much about is the one on Old Pleasanton Road and Camelot Lane. If you want to put that map back up, guys, I think we can talk a little bit more about this one. Yeah, that's the one towards the bottom, Camelot Lane and Old Pleasanton Road. We haven't talked about this as much. It's a little more recent that the reporting came in. This is Atascosa County, and it was Atascosa County officials that told us this may have involved multiple house fires, and that's Old Pleasanton and Big Leaf Road, which is just a couple streets from Camelot Lane. Extremely high winds in this area, which is the same story for everyone in this area. Atascosa County officials have asked that you avoid that neighborhood, avoid that area at all costs, because we see that this might be a little bit smaller, just a couple house fires can turn into something extensive, like we're seeing at the Calaveras fire, which is again 37 in Southton. The fact that it's been named means that it is a larger fire, and that's why a lot of the priority has been set on that. But this Duke fire, which is also named, sending those huge smoke plumes into the air, and it's that black smoke. And I wanted to bring this up because when we heard from SAFD Chief Valerie Frausto, an interesting question was answered, because we had been talking about the black smoke, because with the Calaveras fire, even since the beginning, you would see the line kind of start to spread and a big plume of black smoke would come up, and we were wondering whether that might be property or just heavier brush. That is possible, but the chief did say that the black smoke, which can sometimes look like property, is going up in flames. We were really worried about that with the Calaveras fire, because behind one of those mobile homes, we could not see past it. There was a huge plume of smoke. It looked like a piece of property was going to go up in flames, but really, she said the black smoke is part of the containment process where crews are cutting off the fire line. So that's a really good thing to know. We're reaching out to a lot of the fire departments and fire officials around town to see if maybe they can get on the phone with us and give us some insight into the strategy that goes into fighting these fires, because with 5 fires right now, they're stretched pretty thin, but it's different. At KSAT, we cover all kinds of fires. The house fires and structure fires that we cover are incredibly different strategies than you're seeing now. Of course, the San Antonio Fire Department and the larger departments have brought in their large fire trucks, but those trucks cannot get into that brush. So what we're seeing inside the brush where the fire and the smoke is, these smaller trucks with hoses out the side. One of the trucks that we were really following and eyeing just a couple hours ago had one person with the hose out the right side spraying fire, and that truck was at some point going in semicircles, wherever the fire was. Just incredible bravery too, because that is really the only way to get this. We want to ask about aerial firefighting. I mean, we have some questions that we're definitely going to be getting answered, but the strategy itself is so different when it comes to these grass fires and wildfires, and I think that's why it's so important that we understand what the crews are doing. We had that incredible vantage point from the third story of the South 10 apartments, and we're hoping that that containment level becomes larger, because that's where John Paul Barajas is and our crews. They are getting ready right now for our 5 o'clock newscast. But you know, there is a lot of information that came from him when he's standing over that area, where we would take a live shot from him and then, you know, give some information on power outages. Daniela Ibarra was giving us some live shot information. And then when we headed back to John Paul, half of that field had been burned instead. So, I mean, it's just the incredible movement of this fire. Yeah, we got Adam Caskey here giving some notes.
Yeah, I just want to, give you this.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I can just hop on with you. Just speak.
Go ahead, come on in.
Get awkwardly close to you.
Yeah.
So I just checked with the
Microphone.
Texas A&M Forest Service, and the Duke fire now is an estimated 50 acres.
Okay.
So that's what we have from then. And another fire just west of Johnson City. I don't know if we've reported on that
I
yet.
don't think we have.
Okay, that is called the Clet fire. So
Okay.
281 North, Johnson City, you go west on 290 a couple miles, and that's 100 acres right now.
Wow. Okay,
So
so
that's a bigger one.
that's bigger than the Calaveras fire.
Yep.
It's looking like.
Almost
Okay.
twice the size.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So and Adam Caskey has been tracking this for us. This is the Texas A&M Forest Service, and they're the ones that name the fires. That's where, when there are large fires, they're setting the containment, the acreage. So the A&M Forest Service is saying that the Duke fire, which is the one near the Toyota plant area on Duke and Trumbo roads, where we know that there are 5 or 6 structures that have burned already. The fire chief said that she does not believe any more structures are in danger. They do have some containment level. Adam wasn't able to give me the containment level and the percentage. At the beginning, when we were looking at the fires, the Duke fire did not have a containment percentage. So it looks like it's still the same right now. And we don't know how accurate those containment percentages are, because this is so fast moving, and I'm sure even faster moving because of the wind gusts. Right now, I'm getting some notes. Thank you, Andrew. CPS now has 189 outages, 45 customers affected. So this is going down. This is great news. We just had 195 outages and 10,000 people. So it's coming down slowly, but you know, these winds are picking up trees and blowing them into power lines. This is why a lot of people have their trees trimmed, just because the spring can bring these wide-ranging windstorms, and that's what we're seeing. And so it's good to know. We're going to keep an eye out for the CPS outages. But getting back to this Clet fire, because this is new, we have not reported on this yet. This is west of Johnson City, and this is really surprising to me. We've been keeping an eye on all of this. It says 100 acres have burned. So newer on our radar, but definitely not a low priority, because the Duke fire, which has already burned 5 or 6 structures, if not more, is only 50 acres. So that gives you a comparison. This Clet fire, 100 acres. Now, because we don't know a lot about it, we don't know if that's as close to the structures. More acreage doesn't mean more destruction when it comes to property. It just depends how rural some of these areas are. So, you know, we're hoping that the Clet fire is more just brush, but we're going to have to get some more information on that, because my gosh, 100 acres is not a small fire. And we know that the Calaveras fire, 37 in Southton, which is what you're looking at right now, was at 1.60 acres. So we need to get an update on how many acres it is now. But what it looks like to me is far less smoky in this picture. Look at all of the charred land, though. This has made significant coverage, and it looks like there's a lot of containment, though. I mean, I guess that's the good news in all of this. If you look in the back, look how many mobile homes there are. We counted maybe around 20. This is a mobile home park right there off of, I believe it's Donop Road, and that was one of the roads that was immediately evacuated, because, I mean, if you look at this black line, firefighters did an incredible job. You see maybe a few feet of green in between that black charred land and where these RVs are. And just in the beginning of our coverage a few hours ago, the RVs you're looking at right now, the fire looked like they were burning them. It really did look like that. That long structure with the silver roof is what we were worried earlier. Ernie and I believed that had maybe gotten caught on fire because of how high the flames were behind that. So having the San Antonio Fire Chief Frausto explain to us that those black plumes and huge flame plumes is sometimes because of the containment efforts that the crews themselves putting that fire out and keeping the line, moving the fire line away from these structures can make that black smoke. So we were relieved to hear that because we were so concerned that some of those RVs had caught fire. Thank goodness that's not the case. What we've seen and heard, and John Paul has been keeping a close eye on this, he has not seen or heard that any of those structures caught fire, which is honestly just a miracle considering how close this was. So we're going to keep looking at this and tracking these multiple fires, massive fires, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to our breaking news coverage. As I told you in our last segment, we have our crews working behind the scenes here in the newsroom to get us some perspective on what it's like to fight these fires. We've been talking a lot about how we see the crews interacting, working together, and their strategy. And we were hoping to find an expert in the field, and we did. We finally got a hold of Leon Valley Fire Chief Michael Naughton. Chief, thank you so much for joining us. It's so helpful to get your perspective.
Absolutely.
So I'm assuming you've been tracking these pretty closely. How early in the day were you getting wind that these were spreading pretty quick?
Early this morning, the winds were fairly strong, and there was reports of, some small grass fire, brush fires. And as the day progressed and the wind increased, the numbers got more and more and bigger.
Yeah, and what kind of our meteorologists have been watching this wind for a while. We knew it was coming. You guys knew it was coming. How do you prepare for something like this? Because you know how dry it is out there. We know how windy it's going to be. They've been described as historical winds. So is there any way to prepare for that?
So if you're talking about the fire departments, we tend to, when the wind is strong like this, we tend to put more resources on a fire faster to prevent it from growing than we normally would. As far as a homeowner goes, there's things they can do before a fire to address winds and things like that. They can alleviate burnable material around their house. They can trim up brush around their house, they can cut grass, they can do all sorts of things. But as far as the fire department, all we can do is put people out there because we don't know where it's going to start. We don't know when it's going to start.
Right.
And something as simple as a truck going down a highway that drags a chain on the ground can spark a fire that spreads quickly.
Right, and I appreciate that. You know, we say sometimes, we joke, okay, it's so obvious, but it's really important because we're seeing what's happening. How many people are with your department? How many crew members do you guys have?
We have 28 firefighters
28. Okay.
on staff. We keep 8 on duty at all times, plus some admin people.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good number. We have some of these smaller towns that have far less than that, and our volunteer fire departments. When we talked about these ones out in the county, in these really small areas, very rural areas, we were talking about this, about how you respond to that with a smaller crew and what the protocol is for response. At what point do you call for more help, for higher resources, a bigger department, maybe like San Antonio Fire Department, like the county did, because we see that teamwork. What is the kind of tripping point for when you need to ask for more help?
So on a day like today, if you get dispatched to a brush fire, grass fire, you would call for a lot of help right away. Usually the person calling in the incident will say, hey, there's a field on fire, or there's, a bunch of brush on fire. It's not something small. You would get resources coming right away. And luckily in our region, in the Bexar County region and the counties that surround us, we pretty much have mutual aid or automatic aid agreements in place to be able to call these additional resources. The departments that are smaller, they'll already have plans in place to get the next 3 fire stations around them rolling on something so they can put it out or get control of it before it spreads into their jurisdiction.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you bring up. There is obviously some great communication that has to happen, and we have an incredible vantage point of this Calaveras fire. There's a multi-story apartment, and we've had this view of the way these crews are fighting the fire, and it is so insightful and inspiring, really, how everyone's communicating so well, because you see people with different vests on, and you can tell the colors. They're not all from the same place. So how do you guys communicate? How do you know how to communicate together? Do you train together, or is it all just the same protocol that you follow when you're at a wildfire?
We basically all do the same thing and receive the same training. While we may not work together on a regular basis, we all get the same basic wildland firefighter training that teaches us how to do this stuff, where we're going to fight fire from, our escape routes and things like that. And when you talk about communications, since 9/11, there has been just a huge push to get everybody talking the same, on the same radios and the same channels. And fortunately for us, being Bexar County residents, we're all part, for the most part, of the Bexar County City of San Antonio Shirts radio system. And so we all talk on the same radio. We get dispatched and we have mutual aid channels, and everybody's in the same place talking. As opposed to years and years ago, nobody was on the same radio channels. Nobody had the same radios, not even on the same frequencies. And today, we just turn a knob and we're talking to whoever's on that scene. So it's come a long way in the last several years, and there's been a tremendous push for mutual aid. And it doesn't matter if you're a department the size of San Antonio or if you're the department that's only got 3 guys sometime at the fire station.
Wow.
Everybody talks the same, everybody does the same, and everybody eventually is going to need help.
That is such valuable insight, and I really appreciate that explanation. I mean, as a resident here, regardless of what county you're in, it really makes me feel more confident to know how seamlessly you work together, and I have seen that in action today. I have watched for hours, like I said before, these crews working together. I mean, we reported that there are Travis County crews from Austin, and there are Waco crews that have come in, and it's amazing to see the seamless communication. So it's great to know how that all works, and it makes a lot of us feel better about the situation when a fire can get that close to our property. Because at this Calaveras fire, which is what the 37 and Salton fire is now called by the Forest Service, we watched so nervously as this fire crept feet away from some of these mobile homes, and it looked like it was going to encapsulate these homes, but somehow these crews were able to stop that line. When you are that close to property, what are they doing? Are they trying to move the direction of the fire? Because whatever they did worked, and I would love some insight into how they were able to do that.
So back to one of your first comments about Waco and whatever other names you said, the state of Texas has a mutual aid system that crosses county lines all across the state. So right now, you have fire crews dispatched to, hold on. You have fire crews in South Texas right now from our region helping fight fires down there that were deployed before this started. The interstate mutual aid works great. In West Texas, we get a lot of fire crews that go to West Texas for those big fires that happen every year. So when it happens to us, these people come right to us. And when you're talking about fighting fires out there in brush and grass and all that, one of the big things they tell you is to always fight from the black. So fire crews are on the burnt side of the fire, and they're trying to break that burning fire line and slow the spread of the fire. But they're not on the front of it. They may go to the front and try to build fire breaks to where they can stop a fire from spreading. But a lot of the smaller crews are on the back side of the fire trying to stop it from moving forward. If you have big patches of land, they'll bring in bulldozers and they'll just start cutting swaths of land down to the mineral earth to keep the fire from spreading. And the one thing that I'll tell you about the fire today in the wind is an ember from a burning tree or stick or branch or something can travel a mile in the wind.
Wow.
A mile.
Wow. And even quicker, I'm sure now.
Oh, yeah. So you could have fire spreading way past where you're at with wind like this, creating spot fires that can get bigger and bigger and out of control.
Wow.
So it's tough. It's just tough. You don't know where that stuff is going to go. You can monitor the wind and say, we should be a mile down the road heading, southwest because the wind's coming out of the northeast. You can do some of that, and today with drones and helicopters and all that, you can monitor it, but it's just boots on the ground. I mean, these are tough fires to fight, and the way that you're going to fight them short of bulldozers is you've got guys out there on foot putting out fire, dragging hose.
Yeah, and we've seen hoses of all sizes too. It's pretty incredible to watch. A question that we've had, why not, at what point do you fight a fire that grows this big if from an aerial perspective? Do you bring in planes or drones at any point? What's the protocol for that? Because we know we see that in the large California fires and things like that.
It depends on the size of the fire. I can tell you that they've had fire retardant drops at Camp Bullis when Camp Bullis was on fire a couple years ago. It all depends on the incident commander that's running that scene and what he sees best as to be able to put out the fire. I mean, you can't drop the retardant on houses.
Right.
It'll destroy a car if it hits a car. I mean, you're talking dropping a lot of weight, even water runs like that. But you know, it also depends on what's available.
Right. And
Because right now you have some of our regional assets all the way in California still helping with them. It just depends what's available.
Right, and thank you for explaining
that. It's going to get loud just for a second.
I'm sorry?
It's going to get loud just for a second, so I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. If you guys need to get going, then that's...
No, I'll stop it.
Okay.
It's just you're going to hear some talking in the background.
Yeah, that's fine. No, we can still hear you loud and clear. My only other question when it comes to strategy is, we cover so many house fires and structure fires. I've been to hundreds in my coverage here at KSAT, and you hear crews going on the offense or the defense, and that's typically because the structure becomes too dangerous to go inside. Is there a defensive way to fight a wildfire, or is it really just your boots on the ground like you were explaining, and then you just get in there at whatever angle you need to?
It's boots on the ground.
Okay.
It's boots on the ground. I mean, if you know that you have fire coming your direction, you can cut fire breaks.
Right.
If you know something's coming, but most of it is boots to put out the fire. Your boots on the ground. I know that you'll recognize it, but one of the best ways to prevent big fires is to have a fire. It's to do back burns and to pre-burn stuff. If you'll remember a couple summers ago, they burned Guadalupe State Park. They burned a couple other places, and that's to control fire.
Right, that's a great point.
But on a day like today, you couldn't go out and do a back burn. You'd just be starting another fire you couldn't control.
Right, there's a time and a place for sure.
There is.
Yeah.
Those are preemptive things that you can do months before. But
well, that's good to know. Yeah, that's good to know. And I appreciate your insight more than you know for our viewers. Leon Valley Fire Chief Michael Naughton, we appreciate your time so much, and we will be staying in touch with you because that insight was really wonderful. So thanks for being here with us.
Okay, thank you, and I hope everybody's safe.
Yeah, you stay safe as well, you and your crew. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And yeah, we are going to wrap up our coverage right now. If you're watching still, thank you for staying with us for this long. We, started off with one minor fire, and now we're at 6 now with the Clet fire in Johnson City. And so we have all of this, each individual subject that we've talked about over the last 3 hours are articles on our website, ksat.com. If you have been evacuated, make sure you look for those shelters. Please stay safe out there. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll be your 5 o'clock news.